Feeling sore and sorry for himself, Todd Settles spent the day at home recovering from his various injuries. Early this morning, the second-year business commerce student and a friend were walking home from a nightclub when they decided to scale a security fence and enter a honeysuckle construction site.
Just being idiots and went in there, climbed up the top and I crawled into this, I wasn't crawling, I was kind of standing, but went into this vent and just stepped off the edge, and hit the bottom.
The 19-year-old fell 6 metres and incredibly escaped serious injury.
Got cuts up my arms and just a huge bruise on my right bum cheek.
The teenager was stuck in the shaft for about an hour before rescue police were able to lower him a ladder. Do you regret what's happened?
Oh, definitely. I feel like an idiot.
Today he had this message for his rescuers.
Thanks. It wasn't quite enjoyable down there at all.
But his remorse might not be enough. Police are considering taking legal action to recoup the cost of his rescue. Officers say too many people are taking stupid risks.
We see it as a significant time to warn people to avoid building sites like this. They're clearly dangerous, and we've had 2 recent incidents now, with one at the post office at Newcastle and this one.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Morissette's Have a Chat cafe was full of gossipers this morning, locals fascinated by the remains of the Newcastle permanent ATM strewn across the main street.
Very inconvenient for the local residents. They have to find another way of access, can't get through the main road.
What a pain, that people are putting us through.
There are 5 ATMs in the strip. Workers at the nearby St George unsure why the perm was targeted.
I'm actually quite surprised that it wasn't ours. So given that a lot of St George ones have been the ones that have been hit.
Despite the destruction, the thieves left empty-handed, just like in the attack on the Newcastle Permanence branch at Lakehaven last year.
We have a state-of-the-art network of ATMs, and we also have a number of security measures that make our ATMs more difficult to attack in this manner.
The company is working to install gas detectors across the network to improve security.
We're in progress, and obviously with the amount of attention that's occurring at the moment to all institutions' ATMs, we're rolling that out as quickly as we can.
Security footage has been made available to detectives from the Sydney-based Strikeforce Piccadilly, who've offered a reward of $150,000 for information leading to a conviction. Like Macquarie Police say a dark-coloured sedan was seen heading south along Dora Street shortly after the explosion at 3:15 a.m. Penny Evans, NBN News.
Each of these RTA school flashing lights cost the state government a whopping $58,000. Because of the hefty price, only 100 sets are installed across New South Wales each year.
And at this stage, it's going to take decades to outfit every school with flashing lights. So simply our local school children are missing out.
Less than 20 schools in the Hunter have the flashing lights, a figure the NRMA says isn't good enough. Road safety campaigner Peter Olsen has created his own system and says his lights cost just $1,000.
Manly Council has just approved it to operate in their region and their RTA standard. So what this now means is that we can roll out potentially flashing lights to every school in the Hunter and Central Coast regions within years rather than decades.
The NRMA says even if the state doesn't agree to install the cheaper lights, parents can still take action.
Local schools through their P&Cs can fundraise $1,000 and can put them in today.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Clear skies over Pecolbin made for perfect conditions for hand-picking traminer this morning. Unlike past vintages, the grapes don't have far to travel this year, just over the hill to the new winery.
It's an exciting step to be able to control the winemaking process right from the vineyard to the bottle.
The new winemaker, Jeff Byrne, is part of a fresh start for the vineyard that's one of the valley's oldest, having been established in 1866.
Everything's new, from the press, the crusher, to the waste bin, to everything.
The old winery on the hill makes for a popular cellar door, hosting more than 100,000 visitors a year. History important to the label.
We haven't made wine on site since Audrey did, I think in the late 50s. So this is the new facility, and we're making history here.
Although the crop is down 20%, quality is good, with Semillon and Shiraz tipped to be the top drops of the year.
So far, I'd say it'd be one of the vintages of the millennium.
Penny Evans, NBN News. Meet Brianna.
And we're getting fit, and Daddy's going to see you grow up.
Yeah.
She has a few ideas about her dad's health.
And I don't want you to have cigarettes.
That's good. That's good.
And then have coffee either.
Why not coffee?
Because it's not very good for you.
As you might have guessed, the Healthy Dads, Healthy Kids program being run by the Hunter Medical Research Institute has been a big hit.
I like to play games with my dad and jump on him, and he'll be on head.
This Brianna's dad, Shannon, has lost 16 kilos, her mum 8, but that's not been the only benefit.
Brianna and I play together a lot more now, and I think Brianna's just become much closer at home.
Many of the children had never been fans of fruit or vegetables before entering the program. And what sort of fruits do you like now?
Nectarines, oranges, apples.
Yeah, I've lost about 5 kilos so far, so it's been really good, and hopefully got 5 more to go.
It's achieving all expectations in terms of the dads have been losing weight, but also the most important things have been really positive role models for their families in terms of being active and eating healthily.
After regular training sessions, the dads are now on their own. They'll be subjected to a weigh-in 3 months after pledging to stick by their new lifestyles.
Bought my trampoline last Christmas and haven't used it until this one. Now I'm on it all the time.
My kids have always been a bit of a fitness role model for me, and I may have been guilty of not going to kick a ball when they wanted me to in the past, but that's certainly changed now.
But families will always find something to disagree over. Who's the fittest out of the 3 of you after going in this program?
We're fighting over that, I reckon.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
Adam obviously has a figure in his mind, and we have a number that is available to us under the salary cap, and at the moment those two things aren't meeting. The significant thing is that they're both only 21 years of age, which makes both players extremely attractive as we go forward. There's a lot of football in them.
It's a dream 6 years in the making for the former Waratah Mayfield paceman who, as a spectator here in 2003, got his first real taste of top-class cricket.
Yeah, I remember I was just sitting over there on the hill watching, and yeah, it was a very good experience. I remember sitting there thinking how good it would be to represent New South Wales and play at your home ground, you know, where you were born. So to come back and actually wear the baggy blue and to come back to Newcastle and play, it's going to be a very special experience for me.
Bert Cockley could yet be named as 12th man for the match against Tasmania, but has the backing of his captain in replacing the injured Stuart Clark.
We've missed him all summer due to the schedule, and I think it's been a good opportunity for Bert to come in. He's played a couple of games now, and I think he's got 14 wickets in 2 or 3 matches, so he's done really well when he's played.
Should the 22-year-old get the nod, he'll join fellow fast bowler and Newcastle product Mark Cameron. And the Blues really do need to pick up the pace as they pressure for a top 2 finish 4 games out of the final.
If we put 6 points on the board here, then there might be a few nervous teams floating about, I think.
Tasmania included. The Tigers are third on the table with an 8-point buffer over the Blues. They welcome back Test star Jason Frazier on what's been a happy hunting ground.
We had a really good one-day win here probably 4 years ago, so some good memories at this ground for us.
As for Cockley, the best could yet come, and former teammates, family and friends will be watching, his #1 fan among them.
That'll be his biggest supporter, so he'll be here. He's got him tickets already at the gate, so he's looking forward to it.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
We've got internationally acclaimed vineyards, water wonderlands, heritage-listed mountain ranges and a picture-perfect coastline. Those features, combined with the Hunter's proximity to Sydney, are apparently the region's tourism industry's saving grace.
Well, we know that international visitor numbers are going to drop off, but we also know that areas like the Hunter are going to do okay because domestic visitor numbers should remain relatively stable.
A recent Tourism and Transport Forum survey found almost 2/3 of Australian tourism jobs could go because of the global economic crisis. But our local tourism bodies say they're not worried by the findings.
So I don't think we're going to see any full-time job losses in the Hunter. As I mentioned before, if anything, there's actually new jobs going to be created by investment in tourism.
As well as a strong domestic and day trip market, the Hunter also has a steady business tourism sector. Then there's events like the 2009 New South Wales Surf Lifesaving Championships, which was launched today. It alone is expected to bring 15,000 people to Lake Macquarie. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
they seriously need to assess them town by town. Stroud is a growing community.
There's certainly no hiding the level of intrigue at this match. Australian Test selector Jamie Cox is a keen observer here, and he was on the job early. With an opening spot up for grabs, Phil Jakes entered number 1 oval with a head start on youngster Phil Hughes on both counts.
There's no point fretting about it. It's out of the players' hands. I mean, they don't pick the teams. All they can do is perform with bat and ball, and that's the way it should be.
If that's the case, Jakes did little to enhance his claims today. There's still another innings, but his failure couldn't come at a worse time. And the more Hughes continues to rack up the runs, the more he must push his own claims for that Test spot. But the heat will soon switch to the bowlers. Newcastle's Bert Cockley has come into the squad for injured Stuart Clark, and that's opened the door for fellow Newcastle quick Mark Cameron, who's hitting peak form at just the right time with the Test squad selected after this match.
The selectors do like bowlers that have got pace, as you've seen with Peter Siddle. So, there's all to play for. It's a great opportunity.
On the 7th of January, a fire destroyed this house and its contents at Bulwara Heights, leaving the Jacobs family with next to nothing. 2 weeks later, this Raymond Terrace home went up in flames, and just last week, a townhouse at Linwood Estate at Wickham was gutted. In each case, there was no obvious cause for the blaze, and firefighters can't explain why there have been so many devastating house fires this summer.
It's not unusual, although we have had more than we would normally expect at this time of year.
Fireys say there are a few things we can do to reduce the risk of house fires. Smoke alarms must be installed and in working order, and all electrical equipment and cords should be checked for damage. Normally, these tables and chairs would be full of people enjoying breakfast alongside their furry friends. But Newcastle City Council has banned dogs from the city's outdoor eating areas.
We could lose customers every day because of this.
Under the Companions Act, both dog and business owners can be fined $330 on the spot if they're caught with an animal in an outdoor eating area.
Yeah, I think it's very unfair we're paying these. And we're trying to make a living. As you know, the economics at the moment is not the best, and we're all trying to survive in this, and I think it's going to get worse.
The Lord Mayor says council has no choice but to enforce the state government regulations, even if it doesn't necessarily agree with them.
I must say the fines are a bit draconian, and also it puts a lot of onus on restaurant and coffee shop operators to be police, and I don't think that's fair.
Council says if businesses have a problem with the rule, they need to speak up.
We could certainly make representation back to the state government. I think that would be something that could happen if there's enough people, enough operators prepared to put a case to council.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Coming back and playing here, something I can cherish. It's only a trial, but for me personally, it's good to be home.
What better way for a fast bowler to celebrate a birthday than be handed the new ball in a top-class match on your home ground? Even better if you could grab a wicket, but his captain let Cameron down on that mark. Mark Cameron has actually inspired teammate Bert Cockley to reach greater heights. Just 2 seasons ago, he was playing with these guys at Waratah Mayfield. Now they're watching him and loving every bit of it. Father Ron was a little more reserved, but there's no hiding the fact that things are happening fast for this 22-year-old. He's just signed a 2-year deal to play with Tom Moody's Punjab Kings in the Indian Premier League, but it was wickets he was after today. While Cameron simply had no luck on that front, Cockley finally broke through in his second spell of the day, and didn't the crowd love that?
Cappuccino Shores was a more appropriate name for Blacksmiths Beach this morning.
You only had to walk along the shore and you had Ugg boots on. You had to come up into the fresh water to wash it off. That's how thick it was.
It felt like soap, but it didn't come off.
It was really smelly. What did it smell like?
Fish and poo and wing.
The club's senior championships, nippers and even the regional surfboat series had to be called off, with the foam more than a metre deep in some places.
In the water, in the foam, there was some sort of an oil, and it became a safety issue for the boats because they couldn't get their feet in the chocks properly and they were slipping out of their seats.
There are plenty of theories about the cause, including the combination of 4 days of nor'easters mixed with low tides.
With the runoff from all different areas around the lake, it goes out and mixes with the nor'easter, blows it back to shore, and you get the washing machine on the shore with all the foam.
Lake Macquarie City Council has taken samples for testing and the beach won't reopen tomorrow unless it's declared clean. Penny Evans, NBN News. While some see mangroves and swamps as mozzie breeding grounds, there are plenty who believe the Lower Hunters network of wetlands are among the best in the world. Ash Island was the centre of celebrations for the 12th annual World Wetlands Day, with site tours and some interactive lessons for the kids. The area is a haven for all kinds of wildlife, although not necessarily just natives.
It's just so important that we do conserve the wildlife and the flora for the future.
The event comes after the federal government demanded an investigation into the possible impacts of the proposed Tilliger Dam on the local wetland system.
I think it's probably an unknown quantity at present, but I think what we've found with our work here is that given half a chance, they're really responsive to being looked after.
Yesterday, protesters took a helicopter over the proposed site on the Williams River near Dungog to inspect excavation and drilling works being undertaken by Hunter Water. Penny Evans, NBN News.
After missing the cut at his first two events, James Nitties has hit the right sort of form. A leader after round one and joint second midway through the FBR Open. Day 3 began well enough for the 26-year-old who carded 3 birdies and a bogey on his outward 9 to remain a shot off the lead. But the par 5 11th has proved a troublesome hole for the former Charlestown junior. Flying the green with his second shot, he was forced to settle for a double bogey, his second here in as many days. Dropping back in the field, he could have faltered, but riding a new wave of confidence, Nitties held his ground. A birdie on 15 saw him move back to 9 under and a share of 6th with a day to play, boasting the ultimate party hole in world golf. If Nitties can reproduce his early round form, he's set for by far his biggest ever payday, and that would mean party time.
Unlike some 12-year-olds, Sarah Coots loves going to school. She's one of just 12 students at Martins Creek Public, an intimate setting that's allowed her to flourish. Sarah not only suffers from Down syndrome, but a myriad of health problems including heart and lung diseases, as well as delayed physical and mental development. But the Department of Education wants Sarah to move into the unfamiliar world of high school, where she'd be surrounded by hundreds of students her own age.
She's loved by her friends, she's loved by the staff, she's loved by the community, and you know, with all the problems that we face, unknown problems that we face with Sarah's health and condition in the future, I think that sometimes it's just better just to, you know, if you're onto a good thing, just keep where you are.
Sue's campaigned to keep Sarah at her school for 2 years. Last March, the government said Sarah could stay, but on the 12th of January, Verity Firth overturned that permission in a letter saying Sarah's interests are best served through her engaging with the secondary curriculum with her peers, and staying at her current school wasn't supported.
Verity Firth hasn't seen Sarah. She hasn't seen her in a school setting. She hasn't seen everything that works so well for Sarah.
Little Sarah believes she knows what's in her best interest.
You want to stay there?
Yeah.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We've done the broader scale work, which has been really positive, and now we're moving into more of the detail investigations, and that's the work that's been occurring up on site recently.
The on-field action was hot, but off-field was simply sizzling. Spectators scrambling for a shady spot or bringing their own.
We've had 4 very, very hot days, and you just can't expect people to sit in the sun for any length of time.
Cricket New South Wales blames the heat and lack of amenities for poorer than expected crowd numbers at the city's first Sheffield Shield game in 5 years.
Inside the fence, fantastic, you know, great pitch again, good outfield, but certainly I think looking forward, the facilities for the spectators do need to be improved.
It's going to be a very expensive exercise, and as I say, it's a matter of, well, how often are you going to use it? Is it worth the expense? But certainly it needs some attention.
The antiquated scoreboard and dilapidated toilet block are high on the hit list. Newcastle Council pays for all facilities and maintenance at the ground. The Lord Mayor concedes there's room for improvement.
We've got a project underway. We're talking to the Department of Lands about number 1 and number 2 and development in that area. So things are moving on it, but they're all subject to funding.
The ground will again be showcased at a Women's World Cup match next month. As for another Sheffield Shield match, Cricket New South Wales says it'll consider the city for next year, pending talks about facilities.
Needing an outright victory to keep faint finals hopes alive, the Blues opted to declare with a lead of 350 and set up an interesting final day. When edges failed to go to hand, it pointed to a frustrating day in the field before Dominic Thornley got the breakthrough. Doolan came and went for 8. And Bert Cockley loved every bit of that, given the Newcastle speedster grew up playing on this field. 2 for 93. 1 run later, Tasmania was 3 down, care of another Novocastrian, Mark Cameron trapping him for a duck just before lunch. Jonathan Wells proved more than a handful, moving past 50 and looking for more. Test aspirant Doug Bollinger knows only wickets will help his cause, and he left little doubt in removing Dan Marsh. Wells was the key wicket as he pushed into the 80s. When Cockley struck, the Blues had a real sniff of victory. Cameron grabbed a second after tea, and that's when it really got interesting. Nathan Horrocks then continued to spin his way into the Test team. After a stubborn rearguard action, it was Cameron who finished it off, taking the final 2 wickets on his home track and seal an impressive victory for the Blues.
It was a good game in the end, to be fair. Long, hard slog, but that's first-class cricket. We got 6 points today, so that's all that matters.
The pitch and outfield are up there with some of the best in the country, but just need to make sure that we get things for the spectators, a little bit more comfortable.
As he walked off the last hole today, James Niddies had not only secured his biggest payday, but confirmed what many good judges had known for some time. He's a big-time player. Still, the man himself knows it could have been even better.
Very happy, a little bit disappointed because I had a good chance to win, but no, happy with the week.
In contention for the entire tournament, midway through the final round, he remained locked in a share of top spot. But after 4 birdies on his outward 9, his run home proved a real test. And the putts just refused to drop. This would have put him in the outright lead. The 16th at Scottsdale is the ultimate party hole, literally surrounded by tens of thousands of raucous fans. A tough putt to save par had everyone cheering.
In one way, it's crazy, but in the other way, I absolutely love it. It's easily one of the best experiences of my life.
In the end, his challenge ended on 17. Finishing 4th at just his 3rd event, though, there were few complaints. As for the $417,000 Australian payday, it's already going to a good home.
My bank account's been in the minuses for about 4 years now, so definitely help out pay some of those debts off.
Unfortunately, this is a common occurrence for cyclists, and it's enough to turn anyone off riding in traffic.
Dual-purpose lanes basically are death traps. They don't serve either the motorists or the cyclists well at all.
I had someone open a car door on me once riding into town. To be honest, I've never ridden in since that time.
These councillors, along with the Newcastle Cycleway movement, want to encourage commuters to leave their cars at home and get back on their bikes. Initially, they want the dual-purpose parking and cycle lanes along sections of King Street in Newcastle to be exclusive cycle lanes in peak periods. That means no parking during those times.
Anecdotal evidence shows if you make it safer, more people will choose it as a commuting option. Simple as that.
They say also less cars on the roads means a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. A second motion includes a plan to convert part of council-owned parking stations to include bicycle storage and showering facilities for the public. Council officers are recommending the proposal be investigated. A decision will be made tonight. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
There is one road that is particularly important, and that is the extension of Moneybung Road at Cardiff through to Main Road at Cockle Creek.
The expansion of Charlestown Square has endured plenty of controversy, but it was smiles all round at the new Cohiba Road Childcare Centre this morning. Mayor Greg Piper had plenty of fun handing over the keys. But Council says the not-for-profit organisation's new home is no laughing matter. 17 extra places, easier access for parents and modern facilities justifying the decision to relocate.
We looked at these things very carefully when we considered the redevelopment of Charlestown Square and whether or not we were going to get a better outcome for the community. It's great to see them now being delivered.
It actually makes commercial sense in a shopping centre to be connected to that community and be relevant to that community. So we're very proud of this.
Having spent more than $20 million on community infrastructure, GPT is confident the $450 million redevelopment of Charlestown Square will be finished on time.
We're on programme at the moment with the intent to complete in 2 stages mid next year.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
This is about building relationships that will last for, 7 generations, because that's what we're about. We're about talking about creating a future.
Chris Roach was looking for a cheap way to see the world. After cycling through Europe a couple of years ago, he came up with the idea of a global bike ride, mapping out a 75,000 kilometre route.
There's a lot of countries that I wanted to see along the way, and then I basically just joined the dots, and then it ended up being a round the world trip.
Creating awareness of climate change is part of the emission-free mission.
It started as a simple trip, but it's kind of grown, and it's really about encouraging people, I guess, to think about sustainability. There's only a finite amount of resources on this planet, and we've really got to use them in a really smart way. And
when water gets in the way, the keen sailor is hoping to take advantage of the most carbon-friendly way of stretching the seas by hitching a ride on a yacht.
It's a bit tricky, planning all these things and the logistics and stuff of it.
With about $5,000 in his pocket, Chris admits he'll have to pick up some work along the way to cover the costs of his pedal odyssey. although he already has some sponsors to help with punctures and other gear. Penny Evans, NBN News.
Another day, another emergency call. But on the 8th of January, these paramedics were part of a special emergency response which saved the life of Stephen Wallace. Just before 5 p.m, the 41-year-old suffered cardiac arrest and crashed his car on Five Islands Bridge in Lake Macquarie. Police and firefighters were quickly on the scene and began administering CPR. The fact all of our emergency services worked together increased his chance of survival.
I think if this man didn't receive the CPR that he did before we got there, probably the outcome wouldn't have been what it was.
For the man affectionately known as Wally, the day remains a blur.
I don't remember going to work that day. I don't remember driving anywhere that day. The last thing I remember was waking up in the hospital, and that was probably a day or two after the episode.
The paramedics were today rewarded for their efforts, but seeing the family together was cause for more celebration.
You don't generally get to meet people, like obviously he was unconscious at the time, so it's actually nice to meet them as a person and not just a job.
A charity golf day is being organised in May to support Wally's family as he endures at least 6 months of recovery.
I've got to get myself sorted out first in the head and as in the body as well. It is going to be a bit of a process.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
What Harry told me is that he is, if there's any chance, and there's a chance that he will play the weekend, that I can always call him.
As if it could have dragged out any longer. After months of negotiations, Adam McDougall was one of the last to make it to training, but the sentiment was clear. Better late than never.
The club kept asking me to give him a bit more time, and I was happy to do that, given the fact that this is where I would have liked to finish my career off, and it was sort of a win-win for both of us, really.
34 in May, McDougall says he's as fast and powerful as ever, but it's fitness for a long NRL season that remains the question. Having kept in shape in his time away from the club's pre-season, he has 6 weeks to get right on pace. Not a problem, says the veteran.
The flip side was, potentially playing Super 14 in 10 days, so I've got a bit more time now than I would have had if I decided to go play rugby.
Coach Brian Smith admitted relief on his signing today and has no dramas that the Mad Dog will be ready for their first match.
He's still very strong and he's still quick, but he can play both left and right side of the field, and he can play centre and wing. So, they're real vital qualities for us.
Coach Brian Smith knows better than most that nothing is a certainty in rugby league, and while the Knights board has agreed it wants to keep him past this season, the devil's in the detail. It's understood, though, that the board's endorsement of Smith has assisted in the area of player retention. Unlike the coach, however, negotiations with the likes of Priority Buy Corey Patterson are likely to take a while yet. It won't stop Smith from the job at hand, and with the first trial in less than 2 weeks, all fit players will be expected to play.
Simo, Mullo, our top-end players, they'll play a proportion of the game just to give them that early start to their physical rounding out, so they're ready to go on March 15.
There's good signs on Fijian flyer Aku Uate, with the winger recovering well after fracturing his ankle in the World Cup. But the setbacks continue for Danny Wicks. After being floored by illness, it's now a bulging disc which is providing him a real pain in the neck.
He's probably doubtful for that trial against the locals, but the week after we play in Melbourne, I'd like to think he'll be right for that. He'll probably need to be to mount a challenge.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.